Hello, it's Arrow Flinger Al with another edition of the Arrow Flinger Reports on thegraynation.com. You just have to laugh when politicians in two urban counties down the road resort to hiding videos, switching meeting times, and cutting debate time in half to thwart an old busybody and his gang of reformers. Their latest trick play came between Tuesday, May 6th and Thursday, May 15th, 2014 down in Evans. Columbia County has a pledge to post its commission meeting video within 48 hours of its Tuesday meetings, but it took 9 days for this one to see daylight. Graynation.com has been in the habit of bringing videographers to ensure that a video record is secured. But in a previous Columbia County meeting, Chairman Ron Cross admonished that having video shot was unnecessary because the county provides it with such reliability. Not this time. The speaker had a most unpleasant message and an even tougher question, but obviously had no prepared text to post later if the video was unavailable. Rather than let the explosive video and information out, the administration sat on it for a week and a half. Metro Spirit reporter Eric Johnson observed the meeting and wrote a wonderful piece on the Commissioner Ron Thigpen bonus presentation entitled Collateral Damage. The title was pure brilliance because the collateral damage from the Columbia County banking scandal will range far, deep, and wide. Johnson implied that the talk was long-winded, overlooking that it was 8 minutes before a body that used to allow 10 minutes until this campaign season began. He was also puzzled. The key exhibits were not shown to the public because their sensitive nature commanded the decency to allow the Rons, Cross, and Thigpen to respond to the deep concern of this old supporter and friend. To summarize, the county entered into a mass banking agreement with the Rons Bank in 2010 after a series of recusals, mystery documents, a vote to allow 2 commissioners to even vote on it, and more irregularities than comes from a trip to a filthy restaurant. About the same time, Ron Thigpen, who is president of the bank, got a new bonus that looks to have doubled because of the massive Columbia County money deposited in his bank. The media around these parts whines that just about any issue involving money is too complex. Not this one, it's third grade math. If you have 1 over 2, you double the result if you subtract 1 from that bottom number. That's how Ron Thigpen's bonus was set up. With Columbia County's $100 million, at December 31st of that year, the bottom equity of the bank falls to $100 million from $200 million, doubling the end result. Sources of the county monies are from open records request responses, and the bank equity figure comes from the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. When all factors are taken into account, it would appear that the $22,000 cash bonus paid to Thigpen for 2010 was 2.2 times higher than it would have been without the county deal. Last week, Ron Thigpen was overheard in an advertisement for Chairman Cross's re-election saying how, quote, comfortable, unquote, he was with Ron Cross. We all can be comfortable along with him that fellow bank stockholder Cross did the right thing to enhance their wealth. Collateral damage, Mr. Johnson? That was very, very well done. This is the Arrow Flinger Owl reporting to you today, donned in true timber camouflage. More ideally suited for a pine thicket because it's got pine cones on it, rather than against this oak tree. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening, and I hope you'll tune in next time for Cat Burglars and Cat Bankers, the $12 million heist.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I kind of wish that Trey Allen was here because I've got a question for him relating to this process. In February 2010, Columbia County sent out an RFP to multiple banks seeking to consolidate many bank accounts into one preferred bank. The request for proposal were due back the RFP went out in early January, and the RFP was due February 18th, and they were hoping to make a decision by March 9th. At the time of the bid openings, the evaluation panel, which consisted of 4 county employees, came up with a ranking that, based on the criteria that went out in the bid package, would have rewarded a bid to First Citizens Bank. They were the highest rated proposal. Along the way, there's some notations in there because First Citizens, it quoted a floor interest rate of 1%. And Georgia Bank and Trust, it quoted a floor rate of 0.75% that was variable. Sometime in March of that year, there's a memo out from the Finance Committee that says that the Finance Committee, which was then composed of Ron Cross, Ron Thigpen, and Scott Dean being the chairman, that somebody on that committee had required or requested additional information on how to evaluate those bids. And so far, staff hasn't been able to tell me exactly where that information came from. Well, we know it came from Jeffries, the bond underwriter, and they submitted a very simple analysis that postulated that interest rates were going to increase, but instead they decreased. So based on that proposal from Jeffries that came in, and we can't find out who on the Finance Committee requested it, and there doesn't seem to be any correspondence around it, so it's kind of like a mystery document. But maybe you can shine some light on that when I get through. So the Jeffries analysis formed the basis for option number 2, and based on the Jeffries recommendation or analysis, figuring that interest rates were going to increase, the bid was recommended to be awarded to Georgia Bank and Trust. At the time of the vote, Chairman Cross and Commissioner Charles Allen Jr. did not immediately vote because they had shares in Georgia Bank and Trust, but they were under the 5% threshold, and Georgia Bank and Trust, being a publicly held company, was pretty much an exception. It was an opening in the ethics ordinance, and Commissioner Ron Thigpen recused himself from the vote because the Code of Ordinance says, in terms of ethics, that a conflict of interest only exists if a commissioner votes in an official meeting of the commission. So that was sort of the exception there. So when it came to the vote, Commissioners Trey Allen and Scott Dean agreed to allow Commissioner Cross and Commissioner Charles Allen to vote, and then the entire, with the exception of Commissioner Thigpen, voted on this matter, and the package was awarded to Georgia Bank and Trust. I've gotten a number of analyses about the balances that went into that account, those accounts, and by the end, I think around June of 2010, there was something like $70 million in Georgia Bank and Trust, and by the end of the year, it had grown to $124 million. So that is what happened. Also in this analysis for the years 2011 and 2012, the analysis that the Finance Department gave me showed for most of these accounts that the interest rate was the minimum 0.75%, and plus some accounts that were added that were down as low as 0.4. So it would look from the recommendation of the bid analysis that First Citizens would have paid Columbia County significantly more money. Based on these balances, it looks like to me, on the average for the time this blanket order or agreement has been in effect, it's probably been something on the order of $60 million in Georgia Bank and Trust funds. So if you take a quarter percent of that, you'd be talking about $150,000 a year, times 3-4 years. So you're talking about a significant amount of money. But then over the weekend, and that's what prompted me, I'm not as prepared as I'd like to be, but on this, so I just kind of whipped this together this morning in terms of that spreadsheet. I went and looked at the proxy statement of Georgia Bank and Trust that was, I guess it came out in about April of 2010. And there was a change in cash bonus and incentive plan for the executive. And this proxy statement says the amount of the cash incentive will be determined based on the company's actual return on average equity for the year in question.
Mr. Gray, your time is up. Would you bring it to conclusion, please?
Well, 125 million based on this spreadsheet. Georgia Bank and Trust equity at the end of 2010 was 105 million, and that had been pushed down, which pushed down the denominator of this fraction. It had been pushed down by the 124 million that was in Columbia County's money, so that, you know, a balance sheet being assets minus liabilities, that equity is that squeeze. So if you have an increase in liabilities, it squeezes down equity, which that makes the denominator of this fraction smaller. And I don't even know what the interest income on the income earnings side of this equation would be, but they would also be favorable. And based on this revised bonus plan, Mr. Thigpen was paid a bonus.
Gray, would you wrap it up, please?
$22,228. You have any questions?
No, sir, none at all.
Okay.
Mr. Thigpen, you have any questions? Mr. Morris? Thank you, sir.